the podcast filled with stories, experiences, and insights from leading high-performing team experts. Here are your hosts, Spencer Horn and Christian Napier.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Teamwork a Better Way. I'm Christian Napier, and I am joined, as always, by the plum master here, Spencer Horn. Spencer, how are you?
I am great. Was that little Jack Horner sat in a corner? I am so great, Christian. I am grateful for the opportunity to be with you. I am very excited for today. And, you know, this is almost 4 years now that you and I have been yakking at each other.
I know. And the funny thing about that is you would think after 4 years, maybe we'd run out of things to talk about. But actually, the world is more interesting than ever. And that includes our next guest, right, who's going to bring a whole new realm of insights to us today. Super excited to have her join us. So, Spencer, why don't you introduce us to our next guest?
Thank you, Christian. Absolutely. And I had the opportunity of meeting Erin Leslie just a couple of weeks ago. We were in Ottawa, Canada together, speaking at a conference at the PMI Rise conference there. And Erin is the CEO of EQFootprints. And she's a leadership coach and a career strategist who will enable any professional or team to achieve their career aspirations. And she does that through personal development, training, and coaching. And what I saw when we were speaking there together is people just responded to the wisdom and the experience that she brought in such a powerful way. They really, just some great thoughts and experiences. And she believes that every career could benefit from mentorship. And she sees the opportunity in anyone who is stuck or does not know the right actions to propel them towards their next success. And Erin practices one-on-one coaching with clients and mentees across all industries. And she's certified in EQ assessments, multiple assessments. And Erin specializes in emotional intelligence practices and tools to support a stronger emotional quotient in the workplace, which, as you know, is absolutely vital for a thriving workplace. And her emotional intelligence keynote provides insights from her 20 years of business experience as a woman in technology. And combined with a tailored coaching style, she has an intuitive, which I saw as she just responded to people coming up to her, very intuitive ability to uncover personal or environmental barriers and help identify new goals from your business audience, helping professionals, teams, and newcomers with all aspects of business negotiation, personal branding, networking, and business culture. It's not only a vocation, it's her passion. And she has spoken at many events all across Canada and North America. And she is truly passionate about empowering business people and also women. And I'm so excited that we have people that are joining us from all across the globe to learn. Erin, I'm going to bring you on. I should have done that earlier so everyone could see your beautiful face. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you for having me. I'm really grateful to be here with you both.
Well, thank you. We are so glad that you decided to join us today. I want to start off by just tell us how you came here. What was your path, your journey to really focus? Why emotional intelligence, and particularly why, what drew you to your work with leadership and teams?
Yeah. After, like you said, about 20 years in technology, probably a little bit earlier than that, 7 years ago, I started EQ Footprints really because I saw a need to empower and support people advocating for themselves in the workplace, dealing with difficult business relationships, culture, and trying to develop better, stronger teams that authentically work together. And so for me, I wanted to empower people to really get on a journey that they felt passionate about and that they could see the value of how self-awareness and emotional intelligence really brings about a better understanding of the people that you interact with and you want to inspire every day. And it's been an incredible journey of 7 years, as I mentioned. And I'm just always impressed with the different challenges that I face with my clients and the things that we can uncover together for them to be more in tune to the power of emotional intelligence.
Thank you. And for today's theme, really guiding teams in a chaotic world, what are you seeing? What are you noticing in your work with teams that this topic really came to mind when I asked you what you wanted to focus on?
Yeah, I think the shift from the industrialization revolution of the 60s, 70s into, the more modern era of technology enablement for services and digital enablement for different lines of business has brought about a focus about faster, leaner, meaner, doing things smart. But it doesn't necessarily lend the needs of soft skills or power skills, as I should say, for leaders to how do they need to grow with the times of what they're seeing around them, and how do they need to enable themselves to be better leaders in a world that is very chaotic, that has a lot of things going on in different parts of the world that very much impact the people around us. And so you don't need to be a certain person or to look a certain way or to act a certain way to feel those impacts. I think everyone can attest to today that in the past recent years and beyond, there's been enough things going on that it impacts your workplace, it impacts your work life and your ability to juggle the many balls in the air.
So I've got a question. One of the things that's reflected in the topic today is about leading with vulnerability. And you talk about this on your website, authenticity and how important that is. And it seems like we're in kind of a split world where on one hand, we're told we need to be authentic and we need to build trust and empathy and so on and so forth. But we also live in an Instagram reality where everybody puts forward a very polished persona, and what we do is try to paint ourselves in the perfect light. If you go on to social media, oftentimes that's what you see. And so I'm curious where this idea of leading with vulnerability comes from and how important it is today in the Instagram world that we're living in.
Right. It's interesting that you select Instagram as sort of a focal social media. It's kind of deemed as the media of the greatest things going on in your life. But I think part of that is a great topic of affiliation bias and looking at what are the things that you affiliate with that reflect your world and what you connect to. And so my Instagram has a lot of reality in it. It has a lot of people that influence the topics that are going on around the world and the things that they want to see changes in. And we focus on the Gen Z generation. They're all about making an authentic change so that they can feel more connected to the work and the social environments that they lead in. So as leaders, being vulnerable really means to represent an authentic self, to identify that you understand what people are going through, either sympathetically or empathetically, and that you create a space for open conversation and dialogue so that there is a pattern of authentic community in the workplace that people can respond to in addition to doing their work.
So, talk to us a little bit about this world that we're living in right now, Erin, where there's a lot of personal trauma that people are experiencing, and they're bringing a lot of these feelings to work. They're frustrated with what they see going on in the world around them. What do we need to do as leaders to really address these emotional approaches or challenges that their teams are experiencing, and still be able to maintain our focus on what we're there for, which is to get the job done, productivity, and creating value. Really, I mean, that's what we're there for, and it seems like some of that's being hijacked right now. So how do we balance that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think one of the key things about leadership is to be realistic in the moment, to identify your own feelings on certain topics. I know a lot of organizations want to shy away from political, economic, social conversations, but I think it's really important to identify I'm not okay with what's going on right now. And if you're not too, I'm here to help. I'm here to have a conversation. Um, you know, I'm not going to pretend that I wake up every morning and just go to work and do my emails and my meetings and not think about and reflect on those things and how hard that is for myself or for others around me. So just announcing that, indicating that, you know what, without so many, qualifications or my personal perspective, I'm not okay with what's going on right now. And I want you to know that. And just being able to say that out loud to your team, whether in a chat window or in a quick meeting to say, I identify with this is a tough time, and I'm here to provide you assistance either through employee assistance programs or through just having a conversation, or just knowing that, you know what, I need a mental health day and I need to take that day off. And how can we apply tools to that day that'll really, recharge you and make you be able to have a safe space for your own reflection. So those types of dialogues, those words, those intentions, allow leaders to connect better with their teams and really reflect in the moment when it's the most critical. It's not a political statement. It's not a, this is part of our brand kind of statement. It's really just being authentic in the moment. I think it's important for leaders to step outside their comfort zone and, extend to their teams in those times.
So I want to shake it up with you just a little bit here. You're talking, getting out of our comfort zone, I think is great, but I think you're talking about in the sense of being empathetic and connecting and just being more vulnerable. And that's a big part of the theme here. But a minute ago, you mentioned a concept called affiliation bias. And so what I want to shake it up a bit is, don't we also need resilience to be able to deal with this chaotic world? We want to make people safe, but my perception of affiliation bias is I want to make sure that I eliminate anything that makes me uncomfortable in the Instagram people that I follow, the messages that I see, the stories that I hear, instead of getting a more holistic or unbiased perspective of what's going on in the world, and really building up my resilience muscles to be able to deal with the chaos and the adversity and the challenges. Can you talk? I mean, yes, we want to make things safe, but at the same time, how do we grow those resilience muscles?
Mm-hmm. It's important to, when I talk about affiliation biases, to really be aware of what's going on in the world and immersing yourself in other channels that'll give you the news of those people or those places in a place that is more authentic to those areas. So maybe not listening to North American news, but looking at other sources of information. It exposes you to a different language, a different emotion of those situations. Being immersed in that allows you to wear those emotions and those feelings and hear those words that are being used, so that when you yourself are identifying with somebody in a time of need, you can identify with the types of words and styles of ways that they might express the concern that they have for the chaos in the world. So your ability to be resilient is being able to identify with, we're talking about this subject now. Okay, although I'm not an expert, I understand some of the pieces that you're describing to me, and just acknowledging how people are trying to be strong in the moment. And by supporting them, you're building their resilience muscles. And not all leaders are able to do that. It's exhausting for some leaders who don't extend themselves in those ways. So being equipped with other means and other resources is just as important to offer those in the times that you find yourself supporting your teams in different ways other than just doing the work.
Sorry, I know, Christian, go ahead. I could keep going because I have a bunch.
No, I think it's a great thing that you're talking about. And it reminds me of something I just read a day or two ago, a post on LinkedIn that a friend and colleague of mine made. So I'll give him credit for this. His name is Bassam. So Bassam Bassam Salem, who's a longtime executive, originally born in Egypt, raised in Switzerland in the US. And his idea was, if we all had the ability to go somewhere else in the world and live for a month in a culture that we don't necessarily understand, that would help us become a lot more understanding and empathetic, right? Because we start to see things from a different perspective. And so I really like your idea here, Erin, that, hey, can we at least make a conscious effort to consume content and gain knowledge from non-traditional sources? I mean, non-traditional to us personally. Instead of going to the place we always go every day for this kind of content, maybe we step outside and go somewhere else and get another perspective. It also made me think of in companies, and I'm curious to get your thoughts about this, where people provide opportunities in large organizations for others to work in different parts of the organization, whether it's a short-term secondment, okay,
I
normally I
love
work
that
in this
idea,
area
Christian. That's such a
of
you see what he
of
just did there,
operations, but
Aaron?
now I'm going to go work over here in customer support, right? We hear the stories about the CEO of an airline, pretending to be a flight attendant for a flight. Well, that's fine, but what if I'm the staff accountant in an organization and I get an opportunity to work in customer support for a month, so I understand what they're going through and vice versa. And I'm just curious, in your work with organizations, are there some pragmatic solutions, practical solutions to help people in the organization build this empathy by giving them opportunities to have different experiences in the company?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the ways that you develop products is through understanding what your user's journey is and mapping that journey, understanding the user experience. And so anyone developing a product or a service, which most businesses are to one extent or another, have to understand what that journey is and what the emotional facts of that journey are, not just the practical or the functional facts of that journey. And so, when dealing with organizations trying to adjust and broaden the viewpoints of a more holistic viewpoint across their leadership teams, diving into a workshop that talks about understanding product design, service design, user experience, and connectivity to what is the brand that you're trying to support your audience with, and how do you connect to that brand personally? I wish everyone could have passion in their job. Not everyone does. And so understanding, the leadership level, at least, that's leading some of these teams, how can they get more in tune with the actual journey and the human design elements of what they're doing? And emotional intelligence is very much weaved into that style of work. And a lot of organizations have more designers and take more credibility into the design world in order to meet the needs and expand those products more accessibly for individuals.
Go ahead, Christian.
No, I'm back to you, Spencer. I mean, that was my thought, was just, how we can, craft some experiences inside of our organizations as leaders to kind of, I don't know if cross-pollinate is the right word, but to get, people outside of the everyday element, at least for a short period of time, and see what it's like to stand in somebody else's shoes, whether that's the customer's shoes, as you rightly point out, Erin, going through that customer journey, or it's somebody else's shoes that is in the organization. I know that I come from an Olympic background or major events, and so in that respect, we try to do some common opportunities, but usually they're related to the same job that you're doing. It's just in a different city, because I'm going to be I'm a broadcast manager at a venue, and I want to see what that opportunity is like. So I go to another games in another city to experience that for myself. But I just think that there are ways, that we can build empathy for each other by just showing each other, this is what it's like over here,
If I can add to that, obviously, mentorship programs are really important for creating bonds and relationships to unlikeful to meeting, right? A mentee and mentor. And the unique thing about mentee-mentor relationships is it's still a misnomer in organizations. How do I get a mentor? How do I attract a mentor? How do I get a sponsor? And those types of relationships enact what you're describing is, how do I know what the experiences of the different players across my organization? What are their experiences, and how can we make their experiences better within those different system or service lines within the organization? And I think that mentorship program is key in receiving and giving important information that will strengthen the business internally as well.
great comments. We've got people calling in, basically chiming in from Rotterdam and Czechia. So thank you for listening. Some of our friends are listening from all over. You know, I just those who are joining from other places around the world, a lot of them work on international teams. And so they have quite varied experiences culturally in how they have to manage and interact and engage with teams. And I mean, I love what you're talking about, Christian secondment, and Erin talking about just getting people those opportunities. I wonder, does that strengthen our resilience, or does that, I'm going to just switch gears for a second and hopefully tie this in. I feel like here in North America, we talked earlier about the news that we see. Well, when I was in Canada talking to my uncle and aunt live in Ottawa there, so I had a conversation with them. My cousin right now lives in Sri Lanka, and we do not understand what is going on in that country. I hear no news of all the refugees and the persecution that's happening to different groups of people, and it is chaos right now in places around the world. You look at even Cyprus, where I've been the last couple of years, a country that is divided, where there's international UN peacekeepers to separate the Turkish-occupied Cyprus, and so many of us in North America are unaware of all the craziness that's going on and the experiences that our people are happening, how the war is impacting a little island like Cyprus, how that impacts the whole business environment, because they've got to walk this very delicate tightrope of Russian investment and supporting NATO policies, and that all filters into the workplace and how people are working with each other and the pressures that they're feeling with each other. I don't know if I tied that together very well, but Erin, I know I'm throwing something at you, but how do we build our resilience and open up our eyes to learn more about what's going on? Is that helpful, or is that overwhelming?
It goes back to relating to the humans in front of you. So, leading teams internationally, something I'm familiar with. Leading teams locally, people are people. They have needs, they have personal needs, and then they have professional needs. And being aware and open to the conversation of what personal needs might be to create work-life balance so that the professional needs can get fulfilled to the best of everyone's ability. Breaking down barriers so that people feel confident and comfortable to open up and be, themselves fully at work is something that just, creates that space for knowledge about, how's it going in your side of of things, and how can I make it better for you, and create a trust relationship that is so important for leaders to understand. Oh, I didn't know I had a barrier. Let me help you, break that down, because you've been able to uh, be vocal about it and share your thoughts and be authentic. And so demonstrating that, being aware of the different major pieces that are going on internationally, I think is just a matter of doing some research. There's lots of chaos going on. There's lots of good things going on as well, which is equally important to underline. But, creating that authentic space where people can show up as they are, and be free to express themselves is really important. Being able to create the boundless barriers of borders and international space, so that people can just feel like they're in the room with you, working on the situation at hand.
I have a question from Greece, from my friend Konstantina Maltazou. And Konstantina asks, Erin, how can we help ourselves in this before we help others get the view?
That is the essential question. And thank you for asking it, because a lot of people don't know how to look at themselves. It's a great question. Emotional intelligence is defined by, social interactions and the way we perceive information of other people's emotional data, how we give emotional data in order to build and have more effective relationships, deal with change, and cope with adversity. And so understanding our self-awareness is understanding the things that bother us, that make us pivot for the ways that we try to, support ourselves in different needs, whether it's a shocking response or a happy response. Why do we react the way we do? What's our impulsion control on certain things? These are behaviors that are often identified in the workplace, where you can see people shift in the moment depending on what complexity happens in front of them. And so being able to yourself look at what makes me change my mood, what makes me change my ability to communicate with others, or what makes me want to retract in the moment at work, identifying those issues or concerns that might be relationships that haven't been, dealt with, or situations that haven't been necessarily handled in a way where you can like put that aside and keep going forward. So a lot of that responsibility of emotional awareness relies in us in understanding ourselves. So self-awareness is so key in the journey of having better workplace relationships.
So I've got a question for you. On your website, you have identified 4 pillars of strong team dynamics. I really like these pillars: trust, empathy, problem solving, and effective emotional expression. And one of the things that I'd like you to talk a little bit more about is this notion of problem solving, because when it comes to some of these chaotic world events that are affecting our mood, our ability to be effective in our roles, oftentimes we are impacted by problems that we ourselves cannot solve, right? Like there's nothing I personally can do about some of these world conflicts here. And so I'm curious to hear how you address this idea of, being able to build these bridges while recognizing, hey, we're not, and acknowledging we're not here to solve some of these massive world issues and conflicts and things, but we're here to just work together ourselves and be our best selves here. And we have to be able to kind of leave those unsolvable problems to the side and just focus on the things that we can control.
Can I append that for just a moment? I mean, there are people in the world that are like, here in North America, I mean, a lot of Christians are celebrating Christmas, and they're like, with all this stuff going on in the world, we shouldn't be focused on all these wonderful things, right? And it's like, we can't solve all the world's problems, but should we stop living? I mean, I think that adds to what you're saying. I mean, I'd love to hear your perspective on that. What?
I'll start backwards and work forwards. On your last point about, do we forsake joy in order to recognize the pain? And I don't think we can forsake joy. That's how we are resilient, even in the worst of times in history. Humor and finding the light in the little moments is what creates resilience and strength to move forward. And whether that means you're being strong for your family at a distance, or you're in the midst of that which is going on and a part of it and still trying to work or do other things, joy is still very important. I make it a point to, celebrate all the holidays, whether they're from my background or not, and acknowledge holidays across the world, because they all have very, important messages. And those messages are important to people around me. And I want them to know that I also believe in those messages. So I think, recognizing Passover, Hanukkah, Christmas, Ramadan, everything is really important, because they all have significance in various people's lives. And that's a joyful thing to share in those different significance. And so going back to Christian's question about, the problem solving, how do we support in the moment, even though we're kind of like not a part of the problem solvers? What are we doing here? It's sort of helpless feeling sometimes. And so some of the things that I do with my team is, what can we do right now that might be able to help us feel better or feel like we're making a difference? And that could be writing a letter to your state or your governor or, your MP, depending on what country you're in. Just expressing your concern for what's going on and how we can help as a community here to others in other places. You peaceful protests and whatnot, and just supporting people with their beliefs, and saying, I hear you. Giving space for people to say, I'm not feeling good right now, I'm going to log off for an hour, I'll be back. And just saying, I understand. Let me know when you come back if there's anything I can do for you in terms of just having a conversation or changing your work hours so that you can show up when it's easier for you to show up in terms of your, balancing all of these things. So I think there's a number of things we can do to outreach and to create community and supports as a working community, not just as a community within our neighborhoods.
So, Erin, you are also modeling some vulnerability. As we got on today, you were talking about a little chaos that's happening in your world, and your house was attacked by some resident polecat or skunk, or what happened?
Why is this news right now?
Because
Yeah,
we get to show people that here you are dealing with something,
my
and you
house.
find humor.
Yeah, so the joys of the animals outside saying, "Whose house is this?" There was obviously a scuffle at early morning times, and my garage got spray painted with skunk smell, and that just permeated throughout my whole house as I was
I'm
sleeping. And
sorry to laugh. I am so
yeah, it's
sorry.
just one of those things. And yeah, so at some point when my day's over, I'll have to figure out how to get that smell out of the house.
Bless you. And we're dealing with a smelly planet right now. There's a lot of skunk smell all around, and we got to deal with
There
it.
are worse things.
I
There
think
are
it's a
worse.
great metaphor. But I want to go back to Constantina's question that you answered about the importance of self awareness. Can you give us just a couple of strategies that you believe that can help us increase our self awareness? What do you mentor and coach your clients to do to get more self aware?
Absolutely. One of my clients I was working with showed a lot of strength and happiness every day at work, to the point where they were noticing that they weren't connecting with their teammates, and they weren't getting, difficult conversations coming across the desk. They weren't getting the problem solving questions. They were being sort of avoided. And the result of that was an awareness that through their upbringing, being positive and always showing the best and not showing any negativity was the learning path for their life experience. And so in the office, the inability to show, oh, I'm having a bad day, or I wish my house didn't smell like skunk like mine does right now, or, just sharing some of the natural things that cause a little bit of chaos in your day and make you not as positive, demonstrates to people that you're human and that you can relate on different levels, and that it's okay to talk about the bad stuff as well as the good stuff at work. That allows people to problem solve, avoid crisis, determine and, how to risk manage in the moment really, really well with you. And so that was a great awareness that the person realized, I need to be more open about when I'm not good and not make it seem like every day is great, so that people can relate better to me. And another really good tool is self regulation. And self regulation is about, what do I need to do in the moment so that my emotions don't sabotage the things that I want best? So, for example, reading an email that comes across your desk and you immediately have an emotional reaction that's somewhat negative, rather than responding to that, taking a step back, going for a walk, talking it out with a mentor or someone you trust before responding, would allow you to regulate your emotion and make you sort of reflect better and say, well, how can I tackle this in a more meaningful way, and not look at it for some reason jumping to that more emotional state. So self-regulation is critical in self-awareness and understanding, why do I react to some things that I do And what steps can I take in order to improve my ability to self-regulate those emotions?
I really like that. It seems to me that goes to the fourth pillar of strong team dynamics that you've emphasized on your website, which is this concept of effective emotional expression. I really like those words, and I think each of those words has a lot of meaning in it. And so I'm wondering if you can kind of unpack this idea for us a little bit of effective emotional expression.
Yeah. Well, if you think about, the relationships that you have at the office, they're not unlike the relationships you have at home. And what I mean by that is your ability to show up and do all the things you do affect your personal life just as much as your professional life. And so, if you are not taking a step back at home and wondering, why are you always angry when someone doesn't put the garbage away? As an example, what can you self-reflect and say, why does that anger me? Is there a better way to handle my emotions in that moment and create a different outcome so that I'm no longer affected by what I'm witnessing or observing or triggers me? And sometimes you might say, well, I'm not always aware of how I can manage my emotions because it's an external force that's triggering me. But you are 100% in control of yourself. The other things, not as much in control. So that self-regulation, that self-reflection is critical in creating a better balance for yourself and being able to be more at ease with the things that come across your desk or that would normally, create a different emotional response in you than just like, okay, we can tackle that. When you can dive in and dissect some of those things a little bit and go back and say, when did that start for me? And how can I change it? The recognition of those emotional reactions and unearthing them either by writing, journaling, going for a walk and reflecting on one particular item is the best way to start doing that work and building a better resilience for yourself on not wasting your energy in some emotions that might not be serving you in the moments that you need them most.
One of the things that you recommend, I understand, because you are a practitioner of emotional intelligence 2.0 and use those assessments to increase self-awareness is really using an assessment. I know I think I took that assessment, Erin, I don't know, 15 years ago. It was quite depressing. I think I got like 70%, and I was I'm like, and I had to, check myself because I'm like, okay, I talked to my wife who's very self-aware and like, all right, is my answer right on that? No, that is not. No, I'm like, okay. But how do you take an honest self-assessment of your emotional intelligence and how do you assess people's level of awareness and how do you see that they respond to that? Are they open to that? Are they anyway?
Yeah,
What's your experience there?
the first step is identifying that EQ can change. It can grow, unlike your IQ that is stagnated by about 16, 17 years old. So you can, work that muscle, otherwise known as the amygdala in your brain, and create more emotional awareness and emotional intelligence. So that's like a lifelong mission that we should all like strive for and just be like, great, how do I grow this muscle? That's exciting. An assessment allows you to have a point in time reference, and you could assess later on in a couple of years, and it would be a different point in time reference because, as you know, our emotional strengths change with experience and with our ability to self-reflect and grow different strengths in our emotional development. And so that assessment is initially a look at where are you today and what are some of the things that you might be weaker in that you might want to enhance. For example, you might be low empathy. Well, if you think about how that might affect your ability to lead great teams in
Suck
not
it
being
up. Let's go.
yes, right. What does empathy allow you to connect better with your teams, and how would having more empathy create better outcomes for yourself in those relationships? So that's just a very easy example. But the assessment itself has 15 different types of emotional um, uh, aspects known as the emotional quotient makeup. that can really give you an interesting look at when you combine certain emotional assets, how do those combinations change the way you lead teams or lead yourself? And those are where we get into the individual work that can be explored to transform your emotional intelligence.
Just as a follow-up to that, Erin, that organization, Talent Smart, that has that assessment, also has an emotional intelligence 360. How do you
Mhm.
feel about a 360 assessment? Do you use those, and how can that be helpful or hurtful in someone's really professional personal development?
Yeah, I think it depends on the organization and how they see 360s as being effective. 360s are viewed sometimes as, sort of maybe scary because you don't know necessarily what people's response will be. But the goal is to have an authentic outcome of somebody's perception of you in line with the work that you do and how you interact with them or how you show up and may not interact with them. And so they're just basing it based on what they see and hear from you. And those are interesting tools to add to your toolkit in being a better leader or a better individual in working with business relationships across your organization. So that 360 from an emotional lens, you might think you're displaying empathy, to use that example again, and then other people might rate you lower because they're not feeling your empathy. So they are not receiving the data that you claim to be giving out. And so how can you improve that empathy and be more apparent and perceived in your intention to be empathetic? So that's a really interesting awareness for leaders.
I really like that about that assessment because it actually creates a gap analysis where you are also self-assessing, where you either undervalue your awareness compared to what others think or overvalue. So sometimes we actually sell ourselves short in how aware we are, and that can be a problem as well because self-confidence and just the ability to say, hey, I'm having a better impact than I thought. We're often talking about the lack of awareness, but no, they're both lack of awareness. What I mean is lack of empathy or overestimating, which many of us do, but sometimes that underestimating can be a problem too.
Self-confidence is paramount to the makeup of emotional intelligence improvement journey. We all have imposter syndrome. We all have different things that we struggle with. Nobody's different just because they're a leader. And so, that self-confidence check-in is really important in building a better strength of your self-confidence.
Just got David Dame must be a friend of yours.
David Dame is an excellent speaker on accessibility and is a great representative of being empathetic and having great emotional intelligence in the world.
Thank you for listening, David. We're glad you joined us today.
So I've got a question for you, Erin, and it really stems from this idea of the 360 feedback and empathy and all that. Is we all make judgments of others based on limited information, right? So we do not live entirely in somebody else's head 24/7. We don't understand exactly what they're going through, and so we make we make assumptions to kind of like fill in our own gaps, our own knowledge gaps. So we just make assumptions. Oh, well, they behave this way because of this, that, the other. Just a couple of days ago, I was in a meeting and we were discussing a situation with an individual, and there were a lot of assumptions being made about why about the person's behavior. She was very short with another individual and didn't want to have anything really to do with them, and so on and so forth. And the thought that came to my mind is, do we really understand what's going on in this person's life? She's had uh, a lot of personal earthquakes in her family relationships. Could that be potentially impacting how or the reason, the why she is acting the way that she's acting, instead of just saying, well, she's a bad person and all she does is complain all the time and she's very cold and blah blah blah. I mean, how do you, without being able to live in somebody else's head 24/7, how do you in a team environment, work with people to help them build this empathy, help them, try to see, well, what would it be? How would I feel if I was are you even aware that there's a situation like this going on? I'm just curious, what's your experience been in trying to help teams build empathy?
Absolutely. The team usually tells the story, right? You'll see the uncomfortability, the words being described in the moment, the body language, the looks. And so you feel this uneasiness when one person's sort of being singled out for the behavior. And that's an easy cue to pick up on as a leader. And so wanting to continue that harmony, but also make it an authentic space for people, you take the opportunity one-on-one with the individual and you just say, how are you? And you pause and you read the body signs, and they'll tell you, I'm okay and I'm not comfortable telling you anything right now, or I'm not okay and here's some things that I'm dealing with and I'm not quite sure what to do next. And it's usually one or the other. And if you really feel like, the behavior, the body language, the emotionality in the moment with the team, clearly, as you said, this person's got some, emotional stresses and it's coming out, then you say, I think that there might be some underlining concerns that you might be dealing with, perhaps at work. And when you're ready to reflect on them, and if you want to share any of them with me, I definitely want to have that conversation with you, because I know that our team recognized some struggles or some concerns just in the way that you used emotional words or the tonality of your voice. You may not have recognized it, but it was visible to us. And so as a reach out to see, if there's anything I can do to improve what might be underlining across the team or at work, please let me know. And once you make those things aware, the individual might feel they're masking and they're not, and they might feel, a bit vulnerable, but just give space and time. And eventually a lot of people come back and say, okay, there might be some things that I'd like to adjust, and let's see if we can have a conversation about what those are and go from there. And just being able to have the confidence and trust to speak openly can help transform people's uneasiness and being something else that they're probably not.
Well, Christian, we've chatted a lot, but I have one more question that comes from online. I'm doing my best to monitor the social media. For some reason, they're not all coming up on my system, so I'm just trying to keep an eye out. But this comes from Gerasimos in Rotterdam, Erin, and he says, "I hope I get this right, and message me back if I got it wrong. How do you cope with people which believe that being polite is a weakness rather than emotional intelligence?" I don't know if I got that right, but that's the question as I understand it.
So if I understand it right, they're questioning how people perceive being polite as a weakness
Yeah,
rather than.
rather than an emotional intelligence strength.
Mhm. Well, I think there's a double-edged sword on politeness. Obviously, you want to be polite to people and, respect them and meet them halfway in their world and what they're willing to do. But there's also overly politeness. Not being able to pick up on certain cues that someone might be more comfortable with more casualness and less politeness, because they're comfortable with you talking to them on that level. And so you might come across as keeping them at a certain tone or a certain space, that they won't be able to be close to you. And when you're doing a very extensive, polite discourse and addressment to someone, it's almost like you're categorizing them. And so just being able to understand how to read the person and say, I want to respect you, and I like something about you. Talk about something that you really prefer in their abilities, like either their professional abilities or the way they speak or the way they show up, to break the ice, so that the politeness isn't necessarily always this very high level kind of interaction, but something more authentic and easier to manage. But definitely being polite is always a good thing. I don't think it impacts greatly emotional intelligence. I think it's essential to just really focus on the cues when you're speaking to people.
Great feedback. And here is another comment. Sorry, I threw that up. I hope I didn't throw you off, but go ahead. See if you can respond to Erwin here.
Welcome thoughts on what these ideas look like in leading in a team environment from a diversity inclusion perspective. The leader or staff member is different, maybe the one and only to help all employees be the best employees they can. So Erwin's a great leader. Thanks, Erwin, for joining us today in your busy schedule. And, diversity is important, and showing up and being more than a brand on diversity inclusion. Leaders or staff members that may stand out and are the only ones standing for diversity is a difficult space to be in. And so it's really important for all of us to understand, what does diversity mean to me? Even as a privileged white woman, what does diversity mean to me? And be very strong and assertive in letting other people know, I'm here to support. I'm an ally. I see everyone, and here's how I see you. Here's how I want you to understand that I see you, and being very vocal on recognizing the needs of continuing diversity and inclusion within that team dynamic. If you can get that mastered within your team, you can create a ripple effect across your organization. So if you're not the one responsible for DEI, you can definitely set a standard within your team that will attract other people to say, I want to go work there, because they understand how to walk inclusion and talk diversity and bring effective voices across different backgrounds to the table, so that we can all have a great product or service that we're building, but also understand how to work together across our different strengths. And I think that is our first important, responsibilities as leaders, is creating that space where we can identify and show up, but then also say, I'm here to help. And I think these are the ways that I can help, but how do you think I should help you in creating a more diverse and inclusive space, and keeping those dialogues open?
I have to say, Spencer, when you chimed in and said, I've just got one more question, because we've been going on for a while. I honestly was shocked. I thought, have we really been talking that long? I mean, and it was the first time that I actually looked down to see how long we were actually talking, because I was so engaged in what you were saying here, Erin. It's so valuable. If we don't have any other questions from our audience members, or if you don't have any other questions, Spencer, I'm just curious to know if people want to learn more about how you could potentially help them, or your organization could help them and help their teams grow. What's the best way for people to connect with you to learn more about what you're doing and potentially figure out how you could potentially help them?
Yeah, thanks. Definitely connect with me. EQ Footprints is available on all social media platforms, and my website, eqfootprints.com, shares blogs and insights and information on ways that your organization can have workshops, keynotes, training to improve everyone's ability to raise the emotional quotient level within themselves and an organization.
And before I switch over to you, Spencer, I just have to ask about the name, the Footprints name. What's the significance behind that? EQ Footprints. It's a really interesting name.
Yeah, and it's one word, and really it means emotional quotient footprints. You are walking your journey, and the footprints represent your path. And so emotional quotient and your ability to increase your emotional intelligence follows you on that journey and improves your ability and outlook as you proceed down your path. So the footprints is really an important sort of visual connection to your journey ahead and where you've come from, because your experience has helped play a vital role in understanding your emotional intelligence.
I love that. We're all on different points in our journey. And Spencer, you have helped organizations around the world build high-performing teams. And if people want to learn how you could potentially help them, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Always LinkedIn. I just gave a presentation to a leadership group yesterday that I met the week before. They reached out to me on LinkedIn and had me come and talked to their executive retreat yesterday. That's amazing. So that's how quick this tool is at connecting people. So reach out to me on Spencer Horn. And Christian, the world gets to see more of you. How can they find you?
Same, LinkedIn. Just find Christian Napier on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect with anyone and look forward to learning more about you and how we could potentially help you. And so, Erin, thank you for taking an hour out of your day, your very busy day, to be with us today and share your experiences with our listeners and viewers. And for those of you who are tuning in, please like and subscribe to our podcast, and we'll catch you again soon.